Thank you, Speaker. Two SQs for Minister. The first is, can the Minister share details on SMRT's performance against the new maintenance performance standard set up by LTA as part of the new NRFF, which Minister also mentioned, what these KPIs are and whether SMRT has been able to meet all of them. Because I also noticed that if you look at the MKBF statistics, it has been consistently lower than that of SBS Transit. And even so, if you consider that the North East Line, for example, is older than the Circle Line. The second question is that can the Minister share the dollar amounts for maintenance-related expenditures for SMRT in the last 3 years, and also as a percentage of its rail fare revenues, and how has this trended since the NRFF, especially after comments by its chairman in June that it does not want both under and over maintenance, which Minister also referenced, just so that you can set out the full numbers and context here.
Mr. Speaker, I will address the two questions from Mr. Chua together. The maintenance and the overall reliability outcomes, as shown by the MKBF, I think I've explained earlier as well that different lines have different age, different operating environments, run different systems. So while there is indeed a difference in the MKBF numbers across different lines, including between the different lines operated by the same company. So SBS Transit, the two lines that they operate, SMRT, the lines that they operate. So I would say the more important thing is this, and that was what Mr. Seah was trying to drive at. Where do we strike that balance between reliability and maintenance, high standards, versus the costs that we need to incur to sustain those high standards? And we have, after doing the international benchmarking comparison, decided that the target that we want to set is 1 million train kilometers MKBF. And that will put us in the league of the best performing metros around the world. Now, you can say, why not 2 million? Why not 5 million? Nothing to stop you from setting that target, but I hope Mr. Chua will agree with me that we also have to ask that question. If you were to set that target, instead of setting a target of 1 million, we raise it to say 4 million, 5 million. We also got to ask, what is the cost incurred by the system as a whole, which will then translate into cost for commuters, cost for taxpayers to achieve those standards. So that's where I think the balance needs to be struck. 1 million, which is our current target, and as I mentioned earlier, even though there are some differences between the different lines, all the lines have thus far maintained above 1 million since 2019. Now, it doesn't mean that we should take that for granted or become complacent. That's not what I meant. We should continue to work hard, and if we see that Circle Line, for example, is not doing as well. In fact, all the lines at the moment, that is the one with the lowest MKBF. There is ongoing works being done to try and improve the systems, to upgrade for Circle Line, including closing the circle. So we believe once those works are completed over the next couple of years, it will help to improve the overall reliability for Circle Line as well. I don't have the numbers with me in terms of the spending, but what I can assure Mr. Chua and the House is that if we look at the spending over the past few years by the two operators, both of them have not cut back on maintenance. When we look at the amount that they are spending, they have both continued to focus on maintenance and on building up the engineering and technical expertise, which is equally important, the talent pool. So that is something which will remain a priority for LTA and the operators.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also like to thank all the workers and volunteers and all the ancillary personnel like drivers, bus drivers, taxi drivers who have helped with the service recovery in the 6 days during the disruption. I thank the Minister for the answers they've given to my questions. I just have two clarifications. I had question 17 from yesterday's order paper. I'm just not sure whether the Minister has answered that question, or is this subject to the outcome of the investigation by the various bodies. Perhaps the Minister can clarify. My second clarification, pending the outcome of the investigation by the various committees, personnel, whether any additional interim maintenance measure have been put in place or will be put in place so as to prevent similar incidents from happening in the meantime. Thank you.
Minister Chi.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, I don't have the question 17 in front of me, but if I recall correctly, it has to do with the causes of the accident. Perhaps Mr. Tan could clarify.
Mr. Tan, you can, you may want to clarify.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I think it's quicker if I were to just read out the question. To ask the Minister for Transport whether LTA will conduct a review of the existing requirement on the maintenance regime and practices of all MRT trains, including but not limited to the older trains, such as the first generation Kawasaki heavy industry trains. I am not asking any follow-up questions on my PQs relating to the cause and the faults because pending the outcome of the investigation.
Minister Chi.
Mr. Speaker, I thank Mr. Tan for his clarification. He filed a number of questions, and I think, as he pointed out, some relating to the investigations, and I thank Mr. Tan for his understanding that I would not be able to comment on that for now. On maintenance on the old trains, I think I did highlight earlier as well that because the investigations will cover the maintenance regime for the KHI trains and see whether that is something that is a possible reason for the incident. So pending the investigation outcomes, I also likewise seek Mr. Tan's understanding that I will not be able to comment on that. But the important point is this. We don't wait for an incident to happen before we do the necessary checks on the systems and the processes together with the operators. So LTA looks at both what are the outcomes and also whether the systems and processes are in place. And these checks are being done regularly for all the lines, and it's something that is an ongoing work. But as I explained earlier in response to Mr. Lim's question, after an incident were to happen, of course, there's heightened alert during that period. You do want to put in some extra checks because you do want to take some additional precautionary measures. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that, therefore, we don't do this regular checks on the other lines and on a regular basis. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I too would like to express my deep appreciation to the rail workers who put in many days, nights and weekends and overtime to restore train services for commuters. Sir, given the higher maintenance costs and failure rates of the first generation trains, can the Minister explain why they were not replaced earlier and what factors delayed the replacement process? For example, were any of the new trains delivered but not immediately put into service? Secondly, the Minister has declined my suggestion to link fare adjustments to service reliability. How then will commuters be assured that fare increases will lead to tangible improvements in service reliability? For example, how much of the fare revenue increase is allocated specifically towards improving service reliability?
Minister Chi.
Mr. Speaker, I have explained in my ministerial statement earlier that the new trains, the schedule was delayed due to COVID-19. But I also provided the assurance that all of the first generation, the older trains, will be replaced before they reach the 38 service mark. So this is still within their service life, and they will be replaced before that 38-year service mark is reached. Can we speed up on the new trains to try and catch up on the delays due to COVID earlier? This is certainly something that we will do our best, but I also hope Mr. Giam agrees we need to do so without compromising safety, so the trains that come will have to be tested thoroughly before they are put into service. So I don't think there's any disagreement on can we speed up and whether we are able to do so to shorten or to do some catching up due to the delays caused by COVID, but to do so in a manner which is safe. The second question from Mr. Giam, I think I've explained my reasons. I accept that Mr. Giam may have a different view, and I respect that. But I hope Mr. Giam understands that we use different tools to achieve different objectives. So for service reliability, we will keep track of the performance, and if the operator were to miss their service quality benchmarks, their reliability benchmarks, they could miss out on receiving certain incentive payments. Or if there are lapses and investigations are conducted and there are lapses, they could also face penalties. So there are incentives for the operator to improve their reliability and to maintain a high level of service quality. If we were to incorporate this element into fares, and as I said, I understand where Mr. Giam and some members of the public are coming from. I understand and I respect your point of view, Mr. Giam, but there are some downsides to doing that as well. Because if you hold back on the fare increases, which are supposed to reflect the overall operating costs facing the public transport system, and there's a chronic shortfall over time, that could then further erode service quality and reliability, which I'm sure we do not want to see that happen. If you say, no, let's not do that, let's ask government to provide a top-up, then effectively we are asking taxpayers to fund the shortfall. So there are some trade-offs, and the PTC, after considering the different perspectives, have decided that we will separate the two things, but to hold the operators accountable and to incentivize them to achieve high reliability standards through other ways.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your ministerial statement. I have two clarifications. The first relates to part of my PQ that I filed for yesterday, where I asked what was the total capacity of bridging bus services put into effect compared to the average ridership of the stations that were closed as part of this disruption. I think the Minister mentioned that bridging bus services cannot match the train in terms of speed and capacity, even with 80 buses deployed, and I think we all agree with that. But I'm just wondering whether he has figures about, how many, what was the capacity of the actual bridging bus services that were deployed. So that's my first clarification. The second one relates to, I think we just talked about safety, and as with other members of the House, I would like to extend my gratitude for the workers and everyone on the ground who work hard to get our rail system up and running again. But I just wanted to come back to this and ask the Minister, what specific measures were taken during this incident to ensure that the workers working around the clock to effect repairs, including those workers who were working for contractors, were basically working safety, including not working double or additional shifts beyond what is safe? And, were there, for example, advisories or directives that the Ministry or LTA that were actually issued to the workers and contractors to tell them, what the avenues and measures that are available to them, for example, if they felt that there were some concerns around the working environment or for the safety? And for example, whether there were any spot checks undertaken to ensure that all rules and safety guidelines were actually adhered to during the repairs process. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I want to just maybe refer Ms. He Ting Ru to what I said earlier in my ministerial statement. I don't have a combined number for her, but each double-decker bus can carry up to 120 passengers. So if you have 80, you can do a simple multiplication. And then you can compare that with the train capacity during normal operations. And I think the conclusion is quite clear. bridging buses alone, even including regular buses, can help to mitigate but not fully absorb the disruption caused by a rail system. So this is why the game plan that we have to improve resilience includes an expansion of our rail network, so that if there's going to be a disruption on one line, commuters can then switch to a different train line. And that, I think, will help to be able to absorb a large proportion of the affected load due to the disruption. Then buses will come in to supplement this, to provide additional capacity. And buses have their roles because they are more nimble, they are more flexible. But buses alone will not be enough. So that's why we need to continue to invest in expanding our rail network, including in the western part of Singapore, where there are ongoing projects. Ms. Her's second question, I covered it earlier as well in my statement, that safety for workers is a key priority, and we wanted to make sure that when they work day and night, it is not the same person working day and night, that there are different teams that can take shifts, and that they are given rest in between, they are given food and drinks, they are given the proper safety equipment to enable them to work safely. This is not something that we need to impose because there are already ongoing efforts by the operator, by the unions, to, during normal times, emphasize the importance of safety and letting this become part of the culture of the organization. So when a crisis happens, those instincts, those muscles kicked in very naturally, and the support systems are there, the measures are there to take care of the workers and ensure their safety while they work. But what was a bonus, I think, for our workers was that we didn't plan for this, but it came as a positive, pleasant surprise to our workers, was the very encouraging support from commuters and from our members of the public. This is spontaneous, ground up acts of kindness shown by our commuters and the public to encourage our workers, and that really lifted their morale and boosted their spirits.